Over the years, I have really enjoyed my freeze dryer. It has been an asset to me and I've enjoyed what I've been doing. But I have sensed a lot of frustration from a lot of freeze dryer owners that their freeze dryer is nothing more than paperweight that is causing them all kinds of angst and frustration and anger because it just won't work. And primarily it won't work because of vacuum leaks. This is probably my 4th video on vacuum leaks, and I'd like to think this is going to be my last video on vacuum leaks. I've been giving this a lot of thought, done a lot of research, and I think I finally found a way to find the vacuum leaks in a freeze dryer without a lot of hassle. So I hope this video will be helpful for you in solving and finding the vacuum leaks you may experience. Some of my videos in the past have been kind of difficult. They got kind of technical using different dyes and ultraviolet lights. But I think I've stumbled on the perfect way of finding a vacuum leak. And it's going to take some resources out of your pantry to do it. So I have here some flavors. And whatever is a flavor, you can also smell. You got to remember that flavors come from smell. And so I went in my pantry and I found 4 food flavors that are as opposite as they can possibly be, and that's important. So I have strawberry, mint, coconut, and lemon. So you want to get as many flavors as possible, probably not more than 3 or 4. And I picked up these little spray bottles, I think at all the dollar places or somewhere. And what I did, I put the extract directly into the spray bottles without watering them down. That way when I'm done, I can just pour the extract back into the bottles. And so what we're going to do, we're going to localize each possible vacuum leak on a freeze dryer, and we're going to spray either the strawberry, the mint, or the coconut, or the lemon on the potential areas where there's going to be a vacuum leak. Now, this might take 2 people. It's going to take 1 person to mix these up and to spray them, and it'd be best if another person was out of the room or another part of the house where their nostrils and their senses are not going to be contaminated prematurely. And they very well might have to hold their breath as they come in, because what we're going to do, we're going to put a vacuum in the chamber, and we're going to spray the scents on the individual joints, and then we're going to release the vacuum, then have them come in, and they're going to stick their head in the chamber and see if they can smell anything. And that's why a second person, it might be best for them. And don't have that person be one of these individuals that have like long COVID or doesn't have a very good sense of smell. It needs to be someone who can smell really good. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at the freeze dryer and identify the spots we're going to spray these scents at. Now, in addition to the smells we're going to use, we're also going to use some colored water in 2 locations on the freeze dryer. So we're going to do this first because this is going to be like the low-hanging fruit that's going to be really easy to check for really simple vacuum leaks before we tear into the freeze dryer. Because these scents and this method using the smells is going to involve taking the back and the top off the freeze dryer, which can be complicated for a few individuals, but should be pretty simple to do. So we're going to go with the dyes first to check out the 2 locations that are easiest to determine. I love red dye for looking for leaks. Red dye, the color picks up much better than almost any other color, but the problem with using red dye is it can be notorious for staining, especially on carpet. So I would not do this test anywhere near carpet or on tile or stone. I'd definitely put down some rags down below to capture this. If you want to try a different color, that's fine. I like the color red. Well, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a look at this door gasket. And as much as this door gasket can leak, it usually doesn't leak, but it can. So we're going to go with the easy stuff first. Now, with the door gasket here, where this actually seals is inside right on the crest of the gasket itself. It doesn't seal here and it doesn't seal here, but it seals on the top inside this valley in here. That's where this actually seals. So you have the door coming on this side here, and then the metal is coming up inside there, and that's where it actually seals. So we're going to go ahead and test this gasket, and the easiest way to do that is using good old toilet paper. So we're going to get a section of toilet paper here, and what we're going to do, we're just going to pull the gasket in the inside sill up a little bit, and we're going to just work this toilet paper underneath the gasket, going all the way around, like so. So if you were to take a look, you can see where the toilet paper is all the way tucked underneath the gasket of the door. So we're going to go ahead and close the door, and we're going to close the valve in the back, and we're going to come up and we're going to hit the leaf, and we're going to just hit the vacuum, and we're going to just run the vacuum up for a few minutes. We are at about 4,000 millitorr, and that's going to be plenty. And while this is running, I'm going to go ahead, like I've done before, and we're going to spray the gasket along the door, like so, going all the way around. So we're going to spray on here, and then also way in back there, anywhere where this can suck in the moisture and stain the tissue paper that's on the inside. Now I'm going to let that sit for a while, but I also want to show you this. When you're looking at the door, so here's our door right here, and here's the gasket, and here's the edge of the chamber. When you look at and inspect your door gasket, when it's at vacuum, there should still be a piece of metal showing of the chamber going all the way around. You should never have a place on your door where the gasket is actually touching the case of the freeze dryer, because it's the chamber here that is inside making the seal on the gasket. If this gasket is all the way up against the chassis of the freeze dryer, then the chamber is probably not making the seal. So you need to take a look all the way around and make sure that you can see a little piece of silver underneath that gasket to make sure that your chamber gasket is actually sealing. Over time, it is possible for the chamber, the edge of the chamber, to cut into the gasket and to cause a leak on the inside of the gasket. Once you've had a chance to let this soak in, we're going to come back and wipe away any of the excess, because we don't want to contaminate the test when we open it up or when we shut down the vacuum. And we're going to open up the valve and release the vacuum. Okay, we're going to do one last wipe down before we pull out our test piece. We don't want anything to contaminate it. So now we're going to take off this outside gasket. And what we want to look for is we want to take and see if there's going to be any red dye inside where our tissue paper is. Because the vacuum would suck in the red dye, and then it would get on our tissue paper and stain it, and it would let you know where there might be a leak. Well, in this case on mine, I do not have a leak. So this test shows negative for a vacuum leak. So that's an easy thing you can do before having to take apart your freeze dryer. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check the drain valve. To test your drain valve, take your drain hose, take your colored water, and put your drain hose down into the colored water and see if your drain hose will suck up the colored water. If you have a leak on your drain valve, it will slowly suck the colored water up through the drain hose and into the chamber. Of course, you wouldn't let that happen. You'd catch that before then. But if you don't have any water being sucked up, that's an indication that your drain valve is still holding. At this point, if you didn't have any leaks and in your door gasket in your drain valve, it's going to be necessary to take the back panel off your freeze dryer. Now, I already did this, and I also removed the top panel. And as you can see, I have labeled the areas we're going to check. Now, before you start freaking out, this is the arrangement I had to do to create an intentional vacuum leak and to control the vacuum leak to test program 24. So with this just a little bit cracked here, and with this needle valve adjusted, I was able to create an intentional vacuum leak. But don't worry about my drain valve, just worry about the drain valve you have, which is basically just this little valve right here. So we're going to go ahead and get the 4 different scents, and we're going to spray this assembly here where my drain valve is, and then we're going to come around here to this location, and this is where the drain valve actually goes in and is connected to the chamber. So we're going to spray this assortment of fittings with a different scent, and then we're going to come up here to this location right here, which is going to be number 3. Now I've removed this insulation right here. So this insulation right here used to be wrapped right here, but I took this off so I could show you what I was doing. And we're going to spray, this is like the epoxy seal that goes into the Harvest Right chamber. And so we're going to spray a different scent around this one. And we're going to do that at full vacuum, at least anywhere between 250 to 5,000 millitorr. And then we'll go ahead and stop the vacuum, and we're going to smell inside the chamber and see what happens. Now, after we do that one, we're going to come back and do the hose. So we got this joint right here, and once again, my fittings are modified to put a secondary vacuum gauge here. So don't worry about my fittings here, worry about yours. So we're going to spray this location right here for this connection, and then we're going to come down here and we're going to spray this connection right here, and then way up inside here is another JIC connection, number C, and this goes into the chamber. So we're going to do, this will be a separate test with 3 different scents to determine where the leak may be when we smell the air inside the chamber itself. Prior to testing, this would be a good opportunity and almost required to give your freeze dryer a really good cleaning inside and out. As always, I use isopropyl alcohol, but even after the initial cleaning, I would suggest to rinse it a few times so you get a neutral smell inside the freeze dryer, so that the smell of the alcohol does not overpower the scent of the mint or the cherry or the strawberry or whatever else you might be using. So rinse several times until there's no unusual scent coming from your freeze dryer. So we're going to come up here, we're going to hit the leaf, and we're going to hit vacuum, and we're going to run this for a few minutes until we get a really nice strong vacuum inside. And once you have a decent vacuum, somewhere between say 1500 to 3000 millitorr, go ahead and turn the vacuum off. I have my first spray bottle, and this is marked with an L for lemon. And I marked a 1 for location 1 and also an A for location A, but we're going to be doing location 1 first, which is the drain valve. So we're going to take this and I'm going to spray around my drain valve just like this. I'm going to get on all different sides, making sure I give this every opportunity to be sucked up inside. This is location number 2, and that's going to be my coconut. So I have this marked C for coconut. This is location number 2. So I'm going to go ahead, move this out of the way for a second. I'm going to go ahead and spray this fitting with my coconut all around and saturate it pretty good. This is location 3. This is the epoxy fitting, and this is number 3. This is mint. So I'm going to go ahead and spray mint all over the fitting, on the wires. I'm going to be careful not to spray the board that's back here, but I'm going to spray that with my mint and let that sit in for a while. Vacuum is released. Now this is where you might want to have a second person that's out of the room in another part of the house to come get ready. And when they come towards the freeze dryer, they should hold their breath so they don't get any weird scents from in the atmosphere here. So if I was that person, I'd open up the door and I'd actually stick my head in here and see if it can smell anything. And I smell absolutely nothing. So that's a good indication that the drain valve is not leaking, and neither is the fitting at the bottom of the freeze dryer, and my epoxy fitting up on top is not leaking. I could not smell mint or coconut or lemon. Half the test is done, so now we're going to go ahead and turn on the vacuum again, and we're going to test the hoses this time. It's been about 5 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the vacuum. We're at 1300 millitorr. That should be sufficient. When it comes time to check for leaks from the hoses going into the chamber, you want to have your vacuum pump off, because the chamber is the source of the vacuum. And so if there's a leak, we want it to travel this direction along the hose going to the chamber. If we leave the vacuum pump on, then we have the flow coming from the chamber going out to the pump. But we don't want to do that. We want the smell to be drawn into the chamber. So with this test, we want the vacuum pump off. I have my spray number 1, which is for leak location 1 and A, and this is location A. This is lemon. So we're going to go ahead and spray this fitting with lemon. And this is location B right here, and that's going to be my coconut. And we're going to go ahead and spray this location with coconut. Now, when we spray this, we want to spray the joint. We don't want to spray into the chamber because we don't want to contaminate the location C that's behind the wall. We just want to spray this location. And lastly, we're going to spray location C. I'm going to go ahead and take that note off. And this is my mint. And so we're going to spray this joint with mint. And once again, we don't want to spray through the chamber to location B. And this is also a JIC fitting. Now, my understanding from Harvest Right, in current freeze dryer models, this joint has been eliminated. I mean, there's still an elbow there, but it's not a JIC fitting. So that's just one less location to be concerned about. Now, what I previously did, I went ahead and loosened this fitting just a little bit to test for location B, which should be coconut. So I'm going to go release the air from the chamber. And coconut. I smell coconut inside. So there we go. I picked up the leak on that particular vacuum hose, and now I know which hose I need to go tighten. There is one location on the freeze dryer that can be troublesome, and this is where the wires go into the chamber and are sealed in this like epoxy sealant right here. Well, this is one location that can leak and can give you troubles. The second issue is this vacuum transducer or vacuum sensor, whatever you want to call it. There can be times when this could send a false signal. Now, there is a passageway through this that goes back into a chamber that has some small little wires that sense the vacuum inside the chamber. In the configuration that Harvest Right has, this is horizontal. It would have been a little bit more helpful if this would have been tipped up at an angle, to allow any moisture or particulates in here to fall back down inside the chamber. But because of size constraints here, that probably wasn't possible. So it is possible for moisture to get inside this transducer and food particulates to get into the heated wire to give a false signal. Now, I've done a video on this entitled "When a Vacuum Leak is Not a Vacuum Leak." So you might want to take a look at that video and see what I have. But we're going back to an actual leak through this epoxy fitting here. In all other areas of the freeze dryer, if there's a vacuum leak, it's usually a fitting that just needs to be tightened up. This is one location where if there's a vacuum leak, there really isn't a way of tightening up a fitting. And so you actually kind of have to reseal these wires. Now, there is this product right here, and it is called, well, it's RTV 4500. Now, the reason I chose this particular RTV is because this is actually rated to be food safe. This can actually come in contact with food and not be toxic. Now, I don't know what Harvest Right used, and so I believe they do have some information on how to repair this, but I'm just going to show you what I have done in the past. So I'm going to take some of the silicone here, and I'm just going to kind of put it all over the nut and the wires here. Now, it's best to do this under a strong vacuum, because if there is a strong vacuum, you want the vacuum to actually suck some of the silicone through the crack where it may be leaking to help seal it. So we're going to go through with my finger. I'm going to kind of smash this all around underneath, kind of work it into every nook and cranny here under a strong vacuum. And I just want to be really liberal with this sealer. And this has quite an interesting smell. You'd have to smell it to understand it. I don't know how to describe it. But when I'm done with this, I can actually open up the freeze dryer door like we did with the mint, the coconut, and the strawberry. Was it strawberry? Mint, coconut, I can't remember the scents we used. And actually smell for the smell that's on my finger here. It's a kind of an industrial scent. So we're going to let this dry now. I'm going to allow this to set up overnight before we run any additional batches. I hope you find these hints, tips, and suggestions helpful in getting your freeze dryer back into operational service. I know from experience that when I get a vacuum leak, it can be very frustrating. So in addition to these suggestions, I'd like to quickly cover a few things from the video. I did make a video entitled "When a Vacuum Leak Isn't a Vacuum Leak," and this deals with the vacuum sensor or the vacuum transducer. And you can see right in here, if I look at inside, there's these little teeny wires that can get dirty, and if they do get dirty or they get broken, then they can send the motherboard a false signal on what the vacuum is actually doing. So you might want to take a look at that video and see if that's going to be helpful. As far as the scents, what I had access to out of my pantry were some food flavoring, some extracts, and there's mint right here, and there's some orange, and there's some limes. I would suggest, if this is all that you have, that you use something that has a strong aroma so you can smell it easily. The other alternative is to get some of these car air fresheners. Now, you can usually buy these at most auto parts stores. I mean, we have a lemon, we have a cherry, we have a jasmine. New car smell, I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to be, but whatever you're going to get, just make sure it's something that you can identify easily. Now, you could probably also use perfumes and aftershaves. These would probably work. I don't know how well they would work.
After I got done using these aromas up here, my kitchen smelled quite interesting. Now, before I went to the extracts, I actually ordered some stuff off of Amazon, and this was the actual ad. And I was hoping that I would have got, you know, for $7.99, I could get an assortment of these scents. But it turns out in the description, which is not real clear, I only got 2 of these. And the 2 smells I did get turned out to be Black Rain and Carnival. Well, I have no idea what Black Rain and Carnival is supposed to smell like, so you might want to shy away from some of the foo-foo scents that are out there. Something like, you know, like new car smell. Stick with some scents that are easily detectable, like lemon, cherry, jasmine, mint, orange, cinnamon, and the like. So I hope you find this helpful, because the whole point of doing this video is to be able to get your freeze dryer back up and running, because, you know, you paid a lot of money to get a freeze dryer, and it should work, and it should work well, because if your freeze dryer is happy, you'll be happy. Well, anyway, thank you for your time. Please subscribe. I'll send you another video soon. And as always, go forth and freeze dry the world.